Good afternoon, dear Sangha. I'd like to share a few announcements before we get started today. We here, the residents of Heartwood, the Heartwood Resident Sangha, I should say, offer the novena prayers for the first 9 days of 2001, and then weekly for the 9 weeks following. So we will now be moving the novenas to once a month on the third Thursday of each month. We look forward to receiving your prayers. You can send those to us at prayer@heartwoodrefuge.org, and we will be reminding you, but again, this will be every third Thursday between 5:45 and 6 p.m. Heartwood is also transitioning to some new and exciting communication tools, so please stay tuned for more information and updates moving forward. We have events and retreats coming up. This coming Friday, which is March 26th, we'll be having our Friday Fun Night, which will be a storytelling event. So get your 3 to 5 minute stories ready, and they can be about, the heartbreaking or the happiest moments, and just wanting to learn more about each other as a Sangha and also have a fun night. And of course, audience members are also always needed. So if you'd like to listen and not necessarily share your story, still please go to the resident part of our website and sign up so that you may get the Zoom link for that. So that'll be Friday, March 26th at 6 p.m. Also, we have retreats coming up, Zoom retreats, April 15th to the 18th, Metabolizing Emotion in the Art of Being, In Touch with Yourself with Nick Krantz, and also on Zoom, May 15th, Letting Go in 4 Stages with Martine Batchelor. More information will be on our website, and if you're interested in just learning more or signing up, of course, please go to the retreats section of our website. Heartwood will soon be offering some internship opportunities, which we're really excited about. The internships will be embedded with the 1-year Embracing Simplicity residential program. The internships will be focused on the areas of gardening, kitchening, and IT and audio video. We'll be posting information on the residency page of the website soon. So again, that's the residency page of the website. In the meantime, if you're interested to learn more, please email retreat@heartwoodrefuge.org. Also, Venerable Panawati will be offering a study from a Mayahana discourse translated from Chinese to English on the Dharma related to the question, what is cultivation? This will be held on Fridays from 4 to 6:30. Please look for a Zoom link on the Heartwood website. So again, that's the what is cultivation classes on Fridays from 4 to 6:30. Donations and dana continue to rain upon us, and we're so appreciative. Thank you so much. If you are looking to give more or start giving, please just go to the giving option on our website, and it will give you all the information on ways that you can do that. And also, as always, please like, follow, and share Heartwood on all the social media that you have so that we can continue to share the Dharma. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanna. So Sister Claire Grace would like to know how the Sangha is feeling today. How does this Papancha? Mental states of Papancha. How else are we feeling? Great.
Feeling good today.
Feeling like rude. Today, happy and at ease.
Happy and at ease. Feeling great. Feeling good. States of Papancha. Grateful to be here. Collective feelings. And this Dharma talk is actually about our feelings, and maybe not so much about our feelings, but about our experience of our feelings. Often, in several places that I grew up, we would say, I'm in my feelings, or they must be in their feelings. I'm feeling some kind of way today, right? Feeling some kind of way. And what does it mean when we're feeling some kind of way, right? Feeling some kind of way. Often in our teaching, feeling is a state of imbalance or a state of disturbance, as the Buddha teaches us to understand it, being off of our nature or in a reactive state of how the object and the contact come together, right? And basically what our feelings are, it's an emotional state. It's how we define the meaning of those two coming together. So when those two come together, it's how we paint the picture or how we describe the experience of that feeling. But we tend to think of often that small space or that small gap, that very quick moment that happens between the contact and the meeting of the two. We experience the feeling, and that's based off of our, our societal structures or our beliefs, our experiences, the things that we value, and sometimes our deep-rooted personality traits will paint that picture. And I want to share with the Sangha that I think it was Friday, it was either Friday or Saturday, I went on a little bit of a journey, and I'm so inspired from this journey, and I'm so encouraged, and I have a lot of energy from this journey that I went on. And often our spiritual journeys or our getting in touch with ourselves, as Nick Krantz is going to share with us in our upcoming retreat, can often be a journey. I'll share with you when I lived in the monastery down in the Sisters' Hamlet. It was down at the bottom in the oak grove in the oak forest. And the Brothers' Hamlet was up at the top of the mountain. And it had the 4 peaks with the mountains coming down. And it had like these 2 dragons on each side of the cavern. And they weren't actual physical dragons, but they were the way that the mountains were shaped. And Tai had said, look out on the mountain on the right and look out on the mountain on the left. And they're like the dragons that protect us. And I'll remember one of my elder brothers and one of my elder sisters had said, when I was in Aspen, I lived at the monastery for 2 years aspiring to become a nun. You often have to put in a long journey of aspiring and showing your reason of why we come to the monastery, why we come to be ordained. Because often we come somewhere looking for something. We come looking for family, or we come looking for the love of a loved one that may have not been present in our lives, or we come looking to be understood or to get free. So one teacher when I was in Aspen had asked, what is it that you're looking for? What is it that you want from coming here? And I said, there's nothing that I want for being here. There's nothing that I'm looking for. And he said that he hadn't heard that answer in a really, really long time. And I realized that was when I knew where I was where I was supposed to be, because I didn't come looking for anything. The condition of me wanting to be there wasn't based on a desire or on an outcome. And then so when I finally got the robe, I had another elder sister tell me one time, she said, one day that robe, if you're not careful, it can become a prison. It can contain you. And all I wanted was to be a disciple of the Buddha and to come down the altar and take my vows and to have my head shaved and to dive deep into the path of the Dharma and to this path of liberation and what it meant to me. And I couldn't understand what it meant that I could be imprisoned by the very nature of the robe or of the form, right? So not just of the robe of itself, but my idea of what that meant for me and what that looked like for me and what that would bring me. So I practiced with that for a while. And then I remember hearing another elder brother in a Dharma talk saying, he had lived in the monastery for 15 years. And he had seen many other brothers and sisters, siblings of the Dharma, come and go. And they would come to ordain, and then they would come to disrobe, and others would come and others would leave. And he said that he remembered a younger brother telling him that he felt like it was a prison living in the monastery, and that he felt like he was no longer free and that he had to leave the monastery and give up his robe. So this elder brother's advice was to live in a way to be free, live in a way such that we are free. And as I was remembering these sharings and these great teachings of my elder siblings of the Dhamma, I remembered Buddhadasa's book, Life is a Prison. He shares it from a standpoint that often it's our spiritual journey that can sometimes be our prison, how we have the desire to take up and to learn and to understand the Dhamma, or to be free of things that we think that we need to be free from. This is sometimes our drive and our desire in our spiritual practice. So as I was thinking of all of those things, Um, last week I celebrated, that's an interesting word because there was no celebration, but this is how we come to understand things in our language. I celebrated the birthdays of many of my dear friends and family in the month of March. And about 2 months ago, Panyawadi had told me, sister, just kind of hang in there in March. When March comes, you'll be able to take a break and go on a vacation. And at that particular time, I was like, I don't need no break. I'm good. I got this. Like, I don't need a break. And I remember about 8 months ago, it had come to a point where I was really needing a break or a vacation. I was needing a retreat from our retreat center. And I waited until the very last minute until it was like well beyond the time that I needed to go. So this particular time when it came up, often we cultivate or we work really hard and diligent for others so that they may have a space to retreat or to come to rest and realize and relax. And this is a great benefit to be able to serve the Sangha in this way, and to be able to offer this gift to the Sangha. But Friday, I was feeling like I wanted to get away. I wanted to just kind of go. And I remember calling my brother and wishing him a happy birthday, and it's his wife's birthday, and it's two of my nephews' birthday. And a very good friend of mine of 15 years that is now transitioned, her birthday was also in March, and a very dear friend birthday is also in March. And I was just kind of feeling that. I was feeling that energy of those dear ones and of those loved ones around me. And I often can very easily pick up the emotions and the feelings of others, especially that of the land and all of its wonderful elements. I can connect often with the animals of the land. And so in this particular moment, I was feeling the relationship of those loved ones, and they're no longer being present. So what was I in the past? How was I in the past? And the Buddha talks to us about the 3 times about us being in the past, in the present, and also in the future. So these past feelings were very strong. And growing up in California and living in California, I don't know if all of my California friends feel this way, but when we live in California, we just live in California. It's not like the South or the West or the Bay or in the North. You just live in California. And there's something about this sea breeze, about this ability to open up your door and feel the breeze and smell the ocean air, to be able to be within an arm's reach of San Diego or Los Angeles or Orange County or Venice Beach, or maybe it's Santa Barbara or the Bay Area, San Francisco and its bay, or even Yosemite and the redwoods and Big Bear. You can be at the snow. You drive one direction, you can be at the Las Vegas Strip, and in another direction, you can be at the Grand Canyon, and you can be at the beach and the mountains. So in me, there's this deep desire to always want to be able to drive. I love a long road trip. If somebody says we're going on a road trip, it doesn't matter where we're going or what the destination is. I'm the first to want to raise my hand, to want to get behind the wheel and just kind of go. And this is also the air element that's in me, this vastness of space and not being held by boundaries or borders, or there's no form, there's no concrete structure that can bind me, right? So there's this feeling of lightness and air, of wanting to be lifted, and I can move from person to person, and I can move from place to place. So there's this wanderlust inside of me to always want to just go. It doesn't matter if I have the funds, it doesn't matter if I have gas, it doesn't matter if I have things to do or if I don't have things to do. I don't need to take anything with me. There's nothing that I need. I can just go. And there's no reservations about going, because going is often coming. So this feeling was coming up really, really strong. And it wasn't anything that particular that was happening here in our community or that was happening at home. but they were all around me. They were feelings of boredom, which is not something that comes around often for me. So I was feeling, see, already just the nature of saying I was feeling, but I wasn't feeling it, but the boredom was there. It was like off in the distance. There was boredom. And then like right over here, there was loneliness. And I was like, loneliness, like I got everything that I need here. There's nothing to be lonely about, but it was present. And it was this feeling of wanting to get away. I was like, oh, I gotta get away. I wanna go away. So I emailed Panyawadi. I said, hey, Panyawadi, I'm gonna go into Asheville today. I'm gonna go find like one of these cool coffee shops, these organic places that like, full of sounds and colors and objects. So this desire to be around things that brought me satisfaction, right? That at one point in my life would satisfy or take away these feelings that were around me. And also defeat. There was a feeling of defeat, like, oh, I've been defeated. Like, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing else that can be done. I'm exhausted in trying to do. I'm exhausted in trying to be. So as these feelings were there, there was a small insight of awakening, right? So it's not that we're awakened beings, but there's a part of us that comes to see the light that's being shined. So this light was being shined on all of these feelings, and I was like, oh yeah, I know what that is. And I know what that is, but that's not necessarily mine. And this feels really strange that these feelings are here. What are these particular feelings? And I also knew that what is was a deep dive into an abyss of an emotional feeling. So I was like, well, there's no need for me to go there. Let's not do that. Let's not dive into these feelings. Let's not claim these feelings that this is how I'm feeling. And let's also not point the blame to say that that is why, because there are many things that I could have said, that's why that feeling is there. That's why this feeling is here. They're the reason that that feeling is there. You're the reason that that feeling is there. This is because that is, and that is because that is. So these are the habitual tendencies to pick up these types of understandings and these types of feelings. It's kind of like if you have a table at your door and you set your car keys there and you say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to the grocery store, and you just, out of your normal day, wake up and you go, you grab your wallet, you grab your keys, and you're out of the door. There's this habitual tendency to know that you need to grab the keys, that they're always right there. For some of us, sometimes we walk out the door without our keys. But for some of us, there's that tendency, you just pick up the keys and you don't even realize that you're doing that. So these feelings were there, and the idea to pick them up was very, very close. But there was no desire. There was no energy. There was no drive behind wanting to pick up these feelings. It's kind of like if you ever get a firecracker and you, when you're a little kid and you go for the 4th of July and you pick out like your big box of fireworks, and you think about the family getting together and the beautiful colors and the sounds and the sparks that light up the sky at night. And you know that is a condition of the firecracker. And then you go out and you very carefully hold the firecracker out here, and you get your lighter and you go to light it, and there's that energy of like, ooh, it's about to happen, and then it's a dud. And then it's like there's no element there to create the spark. And that's how these particular feelings were at this moment. And it wasn't a matter of observing the feeling, but it was remembering the experience that those feelings would bring about, and also the end result of what those feelings had always brought me in the past. And so there was this desire to go into the city, and that would make it feel better. Let's see how this is. And it was kind of like a test. When you get to this particular point in the practice and you have this freedom to do so, you can test your practice. We say we're practicing, and you can, I always share that it's like having the dog on that retractable leash, and you have to know how far you can let your dog go before it's going to get into some trouble. If you know it's going to go out to the street and get hit by a car, you quickly pull on the lever that pulls the leash back in so your dog can come back to safety. And you kind of got to know how far you can go. You got to know how far you can let the leash out to play. Otherwise, we're not really putting it into practice in our daily life. If we're contained in elements and environments that aren't asking us to do so, asking us to know where we are on the map. If we think we know where we are on the map, but we actually don't have the map laid out in front of us, we may never know. So I thought, right after that, these feelings, this experience of these feelings and seeing that these feelings are there, usually comes the desire of satisfaction. How fun would it be for me to go out and to treat myself because I deserve it? I work really hard. It's like, yeah, that's there. I know that voice. I know what that lie is about. When we come to the Dharma, once you know these things, you can't really tell yourself that anymore. So even though I was telling myself that and I believe it, I do believe that to be true, I knew that that wasn't true. So I was like, yeah, that's not really the case. That's not the trueness of the situation. Going there is not going to satisfy that feeling if I pick up those feelings where that's going to take me. But even knowing that I wasn't attached to those feelings, I was still attached to the feeling of feeling those feelings and the desire of satisfying those feelings that if I pick them up, we're going to make me feel this way. So I immediately jumped to the craving of how to satisfy if I would have picked up those feelings. So you see how tricky our minds can be in our habitual tendencies. And I knew it. I went into it willingly. I made the choice to, let's go see. Let's go in and have some fun and have what was it? I had a brown sugar rosemary latte. And it was good with organic oat milk. And it came in the most beautiful cup with this little flowery design on the top. And as I'm sitting there in the grass, because all the tables were full, and had my little nishidam. The monastic has a mat that you go out so that you can sit anywhere. So I sat in the grass of this cafe, and there's a garden and a little beehive and a mixture of people, all just different diversities, and everybody had a dog. It's one of those places like everybody brings their dog in a water bowl. And I was enjoying the moment, but it wasn't satisfying, but it was enjoyable. And I thought, what is it that this is no longer satisfying, but that it's enjoyable? So in my original email to Panyawati, it was like, hey, this is what I'm going to go do today. This is what I need to do. This is what I want to do. I see what's happening, but I want to do it anyway because I would like to feel better about these feelings that I'm really not feeling about. Right? So it wasn't working. So right after that, I was like, change the plan. So then I emailed her back and I said, I'm going to the beach. I need to go to the beach. I want to go to the beach. And this water element is strong in feeling and the flowing of feeling, and it's wet of emotion, right? So there was a sense to lay everything down, to go to the earth, go to the end of the earth and down to the seashore and to just touch the earth and to smell the breeze and to hear the tide and to hear the waves. So, I asked Siri, where's the closest beach? Take me to the closest beach. She's like, And Siri got an ego. She's got her own papancha, because it's man-made, right? So even Siri has feelings. There's actually a whole study. You can go look at that, like the different, the actual individual that is Siri's voice and how they can translate it into many different accents and languages and feelings and emotions. They actually study the psyche so that when you have the conversation with Siri, last week in Panyawati's Dharma talk, she goes, Siri knows a lot, So I asked her, take me to the nearest beach. And it was like 5 hours. I'm like, 5 hours, that's nothing. And I love to drive. So I'm in the car and I'm driving and I'm just driving. And I'm like, I'm going to the beach. This is super exciting. Listening to my music and, feeling really good about just going. It didn't matter where I was going. It didn't matter what it was. I was just going to the beach, right? So I get there around, actually coming into it, it seemed like this really, really long trip and the sun was starting to go down. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna miss the sunset. So it's like 4 o'clock and I'm looking, I'm like, okay, an hour and a half, what time is the sun gonna what time is the sun gonna set, Siri? You know, she's like, oh, you got about 45 minutes. So I'm like, okay, good. So I'm just driving, and then I get into this this town called Edisto in Southern Carolina, right? And as I start to come into this space of the state, I'm feeling really connected to the land. And I'm just starting to observe where I'm at. And I'm going down this 2-lane highway, and there's like, looking at the gas tank, and I'm like, okay, I got about a quarter of a tank here, you know? And I start to look around, and I come through about 60 miles of hunting camps, you know? And it's funny because when you're in the car, there's signs of impermanence all around. You know, there's the deer on the side of the road, or the car that got turned around, and the ambulance that's, you know, coming to save one. And you're constantly moving through these motions of time. So I get up to these camps, and this marshland, which is really familiar after living in Louisiana for 3 years. And the swamp is exciting, and the water is exciting to me. So you can start to see like the knots of the trees will come back out of the water, and they come up to get the sunlight out of the dark murkiness from underneath the swamp or the marshland. And when I saw that, it was exciting. And then I look out to the left, and there's this camp, this camo camp, you know, and it's a hunting camp. And I'm like, oh man, like I'm in a hunting camp. Where am I? You know, and all of my perceptions and my experience of that experience of seeing camo or a hunter, right, one who hunts for game, came my way. And I'm like, oh man, I need to step it up a little bit. So I get on the gas pedal, and I start speeding up, trying to come through these, you know, next 30 or 40 miles. And then I come into Edisto, and I'm met with a really huge cross. You know, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, it's kind of like out where I live in North Carolina. It's not too much different, you know. Nothing really big there. I grew up in the church, and a Church of God in Christ, and very familiar with that. And then I look to my right, and there's Ebenezer Church. And then I look to my left, and there's Zion Church. And, you know, one is a really, really big, beautiful church. And then there's one that looks like it's been there from like the 1900s, and it just has a door and a steeple, and there's no windows. It's like a house with no windows, but just a door to go in. It's much smaller than this room, actually. And then I start to come up some of these really big homes with really big land and big old pillars out front. And, you know, the structure of these homes are often called plantation homes because of their history. You know, and out in the front, I could see the slave quarters. And then over the two-way path is the shadows of the oak trees hanging over with the Spanish moss hanging. And when I used to live in Louisiana, the Spanish moss used to be so beautiful, and you would have the magnolia trees, but everything has a history, and everything has a voice. If you're quiet enough, and if you're still enough, you can hear. So I started to really like, oh, okay, I'm in a new place. You know, it's not like picking up and going to Santa Barbara in California. You can pull over anywhere and go into any quick stop, and you know, you get stranded on the side of the road. You don't start to wonder where you are. Somebody will come along and say hello and help you. And really close started to be this feeling and experience of fear because of the connection, and because of the things that I saw and the things that I understood, and because of the things that the beliefs or the stories that I've been told, all were very near and very present. And there was a choice that I could make to pick up being afraid of being in a new town with a little less than a quarter of a tank of gas, being a woman, being alone, being in a brown body and in a brown robe with a bald head, and in a town that has a church in every 2 steps away. And then so right after the big sign of the cross, it said, Lord is Lord of Edisto. So I knew who was the boss there, right? Coming in, and I said, okay. But I knew I had to get gas, and I knew the sun was going down, and I knew my destination was to get to the beach, because the beach would bring for me the satisfaction that I was looking for, right? Just touching the sand, putting my foot down in the crystals, and picking up the seashells, and hearing the waves, and looking out and seeing no shore, just water to no end. This is what I was after, and this is what I was craving. So on this journey, The island is only 67 miles. And then so finally I get there and I get out and I start to see some familiar people that make me feel comfortable. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got through that part of town. And now I'm here, I've arrived at the beach. So I get out of the car and I got about 15 minutes. And I come in and it's the most beautiful sight. I mean, I arrived to the sun setting and the sky being blue. And the beach was so clean. There was not a trash can in sight. There was not any trash. And the sand was just so soft. And the water was still and calm. So it was wonderful and inviting. And I sat down. And I sat there for about 10 minutes as the sun was going down. I just enjoyed. And as soon as the sun went down, it was time to pack it up. And I was ready to go home. It was like, And sometimes our satisfactions are like that. We go through like the most difficult things or the hardest, challenging, sometimes fearful journeys for a moment of craving to be satisfied, a moment of pleasure, a moment of desire. And that also was enjoyable, but not satisfying. So then I jump back in the car and I get gas and I head back on my journey. 6 hours back, I'm sorry. And this time it's dark. Luckily the gas station was on this side of the island after you cross the bridge that takes you over. So I filled up and I said, okay, I'm gonna make sure before I go through those long 30 miles of camps, I'm gonna have gas, right? Because there's no gas stations and I'm not stopping at the gas station in the middle of the camp. So this time it's dark on my way back. And there's no thoughts arising and there's no fear arising. And it's just the ride. It's just me and the ride in the same environment, in the same exit of the journey that I was coming into, that I was leaving because of my inability to see and the arising of those perceptions and those mental formations and the quick desire to want to pick up that fear that could have very well been present. It was a wonderful ride home. And I couldn't wait to get back home to Heartwood. Because that was over. It was like, that was over. There was no running to or from. And it's just a reminder that often our prison can be in our mind. So whether it's in that journey of riding through the 50 miles of dark road with no gas station and hunting camps and all of those ideas and views and perceptions that brings, or whether I'm sitting on the beach with the sun going down and hearing the calm sound of the waves, or whether I'm in Heartwood or whether I'm out of Heartwood. And often, we have to ask ourselves, where are we going? Where are we running to? Who are we running to? Who are we running from? Where are we going from? And where is it that we are trying to be? But if it's the nature of our mind that we take from the one place to the next place, then our prison too can be there. Whether we're in a cell incarcerated or whether we're here at Heartwood where you may think, oh, I can't wait to visit Heartwood. The flowers are blooming and the birds are singing and the song of there is wonderful and my practice is elevated when I'm there. But this too can be where you are in your current environment. But it's the nature of our mind. So we ask ourselves, what is the nature of our mind? And I think of that elder brother that said to live in a way that we're free. As a novice, our elder sisters would often remind us of our 5 manners and our precepts, or there were things that we could do and we couldn't do. We weren't allowed to dance. Monastics don't dance. Monastics don't do these things. And sister and I would always find a way to be right between the do and the don't. Well, we're not doing and we're not don'ting, but we're like right here. And our other sister, she was a younger sister as well, but she was our elder sister. And she would be like, you know how to enjoy, huh? And Sister Suchness and I would say, yes, we know how to enjoy it. So we lived in the monastery in a way that we were free. We wouldn't be bound by the constructs of our form or bound by the constructs of the nature of that form. But we would always know how far we could let the leash go, before we were carried away by the satisfaction of those desires or of those things that we could do. But we also weren't bound in the not being able to do, right? So if one would say, we don't do those things, that can also be a way of being bound, of we are not this way, we don't act that way, we don't behave this way because of the identification that we identify with it. So we can ask ourselves, what does it mean to be free, and what is it that we need to be free of? Is it the experience and the idea of that experience? It's not so much being in our feelings or feeling some kind of way. So then I get home and I do a little research on that island. I'm like, okay, what was this that was there? How much of this was that papancha state of mind and the feeling in and the obsession of fear, right? So there are four states of mind that can be picked up, and that's either to destroy something, the hatred or the ill will of it, or to possess something, to have it, so our greed, or to flee from it, which is our fear or our not wanting to be near that. And also another obsession would be our worries or anxiety of the object. So we usually pick up these states of mind based off of that experience, that feeling, our definition of the coming together of the two, right? So I looked at one of our wonderful teachings that the Buddha has given us on the constructing of the aggregates. And in this particular case, I'm going to speak to the aggregate of feeling that comes to us before the emotion. And the Buddha says in the Samyutta Nikaya, the book of the aggregates, says, it's just as when a dog is tied by a leash to a post or stake. If it walks right around that post or stake. If it stands right next to that post or stake. If it sits right next to that post or stake. If it lies down right next to that post or stake. In the same way, an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person regards feelings as, this is myself, this is what I am. This too is the same of all the aggregates. If he walks right around these 5 clinging aggregates. If he stands right next to these 5 clinging aggregates. If he sits right next to these 5 clinging aggregates. If he lies down right next to these 5 clinging aggregates. Thus, one should reflect on one's mind with every moment. For a long time has this mind been defiled by passion, aversion, and delusion. From the defilement of the mind are beings defiled. Also, from the purification of the mind are beings purified. Then he goes on to say, monks, have you ever seen a moving picture show? And I'm wondering right here, like, what was a moving picture show 2,600 years ago? Yes, Lord. That moving picture show was created by the mind. And this mind is even more variegated than a moving picture show, even more than a picture show the Buddha shares with us. And then he says, thus one should reflect on one's mind with every moment. For a long time has this mind been defiled by passion, aversion, and delusion. From the defilement of the mind are beings defiled. From the purification of the mind are beings purified. It's just as when there being dye, black, yellow, orpiment, indigo, or crimson, a dyer or a painter would paint the picture of a woman or a man, complete in all of its parts on a well-polished panel or wall, or on a piece of cloth. In the same way, an uninstructed run-of-the-mill person, when creating, creates nothing but feeling. And I was like, wow, I've been painting this picture, and the light of clarity comes in and it shines it on the mind, and I'm getting this stroke this way, and I'm painting this stroke, and I'm dabbing it in the lilac. Let me dabble it in a little bit of the blue over here, or I think it needs a little bit more of that. And when we can see that, when the light of clarity is shining on that, we don't have to be caught up in our feelings or feeling some kind of way. But we can just watch at the construct of what's happening, the construction of that coming together, and understand that it could be coming from these 3 times. Where is it coming from? What is it that I am painting with? What is the nature of the brush? What is the nature of the paint? So then also through the Bodhisattva, the voice of the Bodhisattva, the Tathagata gives us a way to, where he shares with us an understanding of what that's like when we're not caught up in these feelings of experience and feeling and emotions, or that of the aggregates, right? As two is the aggregate, so not just the aggregate of Vedana or of our tactile sensations, but remember the emotion is the difference of that, or the definition of the tactile sensations. But the Buddha goes on to say, treating the 5 aggregates as real is not to understand their true nature. The Bodhisattva sees the aggregates as empty and practices without being caught in the form and in the word. The 5 aggregates are empty. The Bodhisattva, free of signs, knows that the 5 aggregates are a magic show. Like a magician at the crossroads, giving rise to an illusory crowd and cutting off their heads, all worlds are just as illusory. Knowing this, he feels no fear. The 5 aggregates are ropes that bind. Knowing they are not real, she needs no more dwelling. When the Bodhisattva practices like this and knows which skillful means to use, she, he, or they do not pursue anything. If you hear these teachings and are determined to realize the highest awakening, witness the awakening mind and see that the nature of all things is your own nature. That is the great wisdom that Tathagata is describing. And that comes to us from the Prajnaparamita and the Taisho Tripitaka. And sometimes it can be like this for us. Maybe not for all of our awakened states of our mind. But if we take our practice into our daily life, sometimes we can see that the nature is the construct of our very own painting. So if we spend too much time unraveling or being caught up or carried away, and we come to see that at the end of that untying, that the knot was all a construct and sometimes in our own mind. And even though this experience on my journey could have had realness to it, it could have been a real experience being alone in a new place in the dark, in a strange place with no gas, right? That could have been very real. So there was a heightened awareness of my safety and of making sound decisions. And the fear could have been right there for me to pick up and for me to be the spark that lit off that firework, right? But because the fear had no it had nowhere to go. It was just fear alone, fear of itself. Because it had nowhere to go, its habitual tendency wasn't to take over and drive the wheel for me. And this is not in all of our experiences and in all of our states of understanding. But as we come to awaken to these small insights, they can sometimes give us the energy that we need to continue, and the energy that we need to come through these ways of being together, these collective thoughts and ideas and feelings. So that's what I have to share today. I know we still have some time, so maybe if there are any questions, or I think I'll ask the question again. How is the Sangha feeling?
I know there's something. Super grateful.
Yes.
You end up at Edisto, did you drive across the road?
If you can speak up just a little bit for our virtual Sangha, and then also so I can hear you. Sometimes with our mask, it's hard to hear and understand.
You end up at the Edisto, have you drive across the, they call Little Hollywood?
I haven't, or if I did, I didn't know it. But if any of my friends are out there from Edisto and would like to invite me so that I can have a different experience, I am happy to visit you.
I'm amazing that you it shouldn't be end up at the Pacific Ocean's beach instead of end up at Atlantic Ocean beach.
Yeah, because that's where Siri told me to go. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So I'm looking at like in the 1500s when the Spanish came to Edisto and brought the Christian religion and had intended for the native Indians to pick up the religion, was part of the history of this island. And then that didn't last, so the Spanish settlers had left, and then the Europeans had come in the 1600s, and at that particular time, rice was really a thing. So rice took off, and there were about 235 white settlers in this island, or it was uncolonial at that time, and 1,700 slaves that helped to start the rice plantations. And then a hurricane came and kind of wiped out all of the rice and all of the wealth of that land. And then later in the 1700s, the British came, and then we had the war. And then at that time, cotton seeds had flourished. And then another hurricane had come and wiped out all of the cotton, as they had rebuilt a lot of the wealth and the homes and some of the churches, which many of them are still standing at this day. So there's a lot of history, and sometimes our underlying tendencies, even 300 years later, are still visible and still present in the history of that land. And sometimes it's that way in our nature too, in our nature of our feelings. Even though one has renounced the world or has taken up the form, these celebrations of loved ones and a family can also bring back that idea of how I was in the past. What was I in the past? What shall I be in the future? What am I doing? Am I doing what I need to be doing to be what I'm going to be in the future? So these questions will bring around those feelings that we remember so well. So it's important that we can step back and observe and shine the light of clarity. And observe requires us to do and to not do.
You mentioned about Los Angeles. Are you in the Los Angeles area completely, or are you in a different city? Because I was from Santa Monica. You didn't mention that.
Yeah. Well, I was born in the Bay, and then I moved to Southern California and lived in the West for a really long time. So I traveled up and down the coast. But I also am of Culver City and Venice Beach and Santa Monica. From Oakland and San Francisco and down to San Diego, Escondido,
That's a crowd.
beyond.
I don't know how you like to drive around that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or reflections before we come to a close?
I'll just say I've been working on a painting the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
And this morning, when I was meditating, I was contemplating the very thing that you just spoke about, that our thoughts and feelings are like the painting. We create the reality that we see and experience. And that without that creation, there just isness.
Mm-hmm.
I really felt it this morning. So for you to talk about that was really special.
Mm-hmm. Tina?
I appreciated what you said because I have been working through the thoughts of prison of life as solitude versus solitary confinement, which I perceive as two different things. And when you brought in a representation of painting, I saw the colors. And then I immediately went to the danger of don't paint yourself into a corner. And I recognize, I don't know why that came to me because I'm not artistic. That I appreciate this whole talk as something I need to sit with, because that to have come to my mind from that to me is clearly a prison that I have recognized in myself in that hour that you spoke. Because I am a prisoner of unchaining my own fear and doubt, and I'm better. But I have to stop judging better versus just this is where you are. So that visualization of don't paint yourself into a corner really is something I want to sit with. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you, dear Sangha.
Beautiful story.
Thank you.